Joining me today is Albert Nematalla, and Albert is the eldest son of the late Very Reverend Father Mina Nematalla. Albert, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
So let's start with a bit of your background and some history. Tell us where you grew up.
I grew up in Alexandria, in Egypt, of course.
Yep. And tell us a little bit about how you found out that your father was going to become a priest.
Actually, my father was in Cairo meeting with the Pope at the time, Pope Kyrillos VI, Saint Pope Kyrillos VI, and he was finishing one of his missions in Egypt, and Bishop Samuel, the head of the bishopric of social services, received a request from the Coptic community in Australia for a priest, and the Pope asked my father to head the church in Australia, and it was.
So how old were you at the time?
Around 16.
Yeah. So you were established, you had your schools and your friends, and you needed to kind of leave all that to start to migrate to Australia.
Right. Yes.
Yep. So how did you feel at that time?
Actually, I had mixed feelings during the stages of the time of the ordination all the way to emigrating and arriving in Australia. And it started with, I suppose, feeling excited. Then apprehension started to take hold. Obviously, the unknown, we were never out of, in fact, we were never out of Alexandria. And I felt like leaving everyone, all of my friends and everyone behind, especially at a very young age. That was a huge task. But as it progressed and Father Mina started to prepare for the journey, it took a different feeling of excitement, as I said, especially that Father Mina was preparing by collecting not just books. He also started collecting everything that was needed for the service. And for the first time in my life, I went to Upper Egypt with him in the Virgin Mary Monastery in Upper Egypt, the monastery of Deir al-Maharra. And at the time, the abbot was Abuna Usman al-Maharra'i. And there I discovered things that I didn't even know it existed, and Abuna started collecting things from the library there, and it was a magnificent time for me, all excited, going to different churches, going to different places, collecting stuff for the service. In fact, I remember that Abuna had some sort of shipping containers, small shipping containers made specifically for that task, and he filled about 6 of these containers. The containers were specifically made for the journey. He got someone to construct these. They're wooden containers. They were over a meter in length, over half a meter in width, and over half a meter in height, and they were filled to the brim with books, with stuff, virtually everything that he needed to start the service in Australia.
Wow. So going back, we know Father Mina was a fantastic organizer and a manager. Yes. Going back to his ordination day, was he ordained as a priest? That was his rank?
Actually, at the time, he was given the name of Mina by the late Pope Kyrillos, and he was ordained a priest, and after that he was, at the same day, at the same ceremony, he was elevated to a hegumen, and it was very, very unique and special, and not very common for someone to receive the priesthood and be elevated at the same time to hegemon. So again, that was something that was unique at the time.
So he got the name Mina from Saint Mina, the favourite saint of Pope Carolus, but also Father Mina's favourite saint as well.
Yes.
And was elevated to become a hegumen on the same day.
Correct.
And then he started preparing for his journey to Australia by travelling to Upper Egypt, and you went with him, collected books and things that are needed for the liturgy and the Mass. So tell us now about your journey coming to Australia with the crates that had to be taken with you and all your clothing and things like that.
Yes. It was actually a huge task because we had to take all of these containers with us, and we went by sea, of course, and we had to change in Athens. We went from Alexandria to Athens, and then we changed ship to from Athens to Australia, and that was a huge task. And as I said, for someone that's never ever been outside Egypt, it was also something that we, in a way, excited to see, bit confused as to what's going on at the time. So many luggage, so many containers to take with us. It was a very big thing for us.
And being the oldest, of course, he would have relied on you a lot to help him.
Actually, yes, and I actually took responsibility from a very young age. I believe at the age of 16, 17, that was a huge task to ask, but I got used to it, and I was very, very proud and very happy to do it, and participation was quite easy, just came natural, I suppose.
That's great. So coming into Australia, the first stop was Melbourne. And I believe there was a Mass that was performed there. Father Mina performed a Mass there. You, I suppose, would have been the deacon for that Mass?
Yes, and we arrived on a day, I can't remember the day itself, but we did a El Ashia, which...
Vespers.
Yes, before the Mass, and the following day we did the Mass, and we got the urban, holy bread, yes, made at someone's house, and we had the Mass the following day. It was a memorable day. It was a fantastic day. Everyone in Melbourne found it, all the Egyptians were talking about, found out about the time, and they were all there, all present, and it was a very, very blessed day.
And then heading up to Sydney, you were then also greeted with another crowd of Egyptians. Explain the day of arrival, being photographed and seeing so many people, anticipating the arrival of their priest.
Actually, we were received by a group of, I believe, 4 or 5 peoples that came on board the ship whilst we're still at sea before docking at Sydney, and they accompanied us departing the ship. So to us, the first thing that we've met was Egyptian faces, and that really made it really very, very easy for us to come down and face the huge number of people that were in the port, expecting us.
And being the oldest, again, we discussed how you were Father Mina's right-hand man, I suppose. Did you do any interstate travel with him or anything beyond Sydney?
Yes, Father Mina actually went to Perth and also to Adelaide and to Melbourne in Victoria. And I accompanied him in especially Melbourne. I was with him the first time. After that, the church in Melbourne was actually getting ready and in anticipation. So there were deacons in there, and there were people that Father Mina actually did the holy bread with them. So I was not needed to go back with him to Victoria, to Melbourne. But in Perth, we celebrated a baptism, and obviously the mass, and also there was a wedding there that we celebrated as well in Perth. And in addition to that, Adelaide as well, there was a very small community at the time in Adelaide.
So travelling around a lot with Father Mina, you were exposed to a lot of the history and the building of the Coptic Church in Sydney, especially with Redfern and Sydenham and him establishing all these churches. So he also received the Order of Australia Medal for his 25-year service to the Egyptian community in Australia.
Yes, he did. I also wanted to say that we arrived and we celebrated Mass in Redfern in a hired hall. But when we moved to Sydenham, the church in Sydenham, it was actually the first Coptic Egyptian church to be bought outside of Egypt. So Australia, Sydney, and Father Mina were the first to have an owned church outside of Egypt. And because of his services and dedication, he was awarded that medal, which was really a memorable day, because for Father Mina, wearing his robe and his unique, something that were not seen by Australians before. So that particular day, day that he received the medal, he was actually the flavor of the day, because he was approached by everyone, wanted to know, what's this dress that you're wearing, where you're from, and obviously wearing the cross was a great help to say that, you know, we do have a church in Australia. It's a Coptic church, and obviously the Coptic church is, if not the eldest, it is one of the eldest churches in the world. So it was a magnificent day, and not just for Father Mina, it was a magnificent day for us as well. I went with Mum to support Dad, and obviously received that medal. It was really a magnificent day, a blessed day. And afterwards, we had a huge celebration. The church actually celebrated that event, because Father Mina was the first Egyptian to receive the medal in Australia. So that was a huge thing at the time.
It certainly was, and I believe the New South Wales Governor gave him the award on behalf of the Queen.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. So after receiving the Order of Australia Medal, we understand Father Mina continued in his service as usual with his dedication, and he also saw a lot of the congregation growing up to become priests and bishops and monks, and saw the fruits of his labour.
Yes, that was actually one of the reasons, especially in the last few days of his life. Father Mina was actually in pain, and he had a lot of sickness. But the one thing I can assure you, that he passed away a very, very happy and content person, because he saw the fruit of his labour. He saw two bishops. He saw Bishop Suriel, the Bishop of Melbourne Diocese, and also Bishop Angelos, two of his students, or two of his parishioners. He also saw many deacons ordained. He saw priests ordained. He saw from his congregation. He also saw monks. We had Father Daniel, who happened to be Bishop Daniel, now the head of the monastery in Sydney.
That's wonderful to see. Anything else you'd like to share with us about the life of Father Mina and the establishment of the Coptic Church in Australia?
Well, I can say that Father Mina actually had a huge journey, and that journey included a lot of wishes, a lot of things that he wanted to have and establish in his life. he established a lot of things. The one thing that he wanted to see was a house for the elder people of our community, which I hope it will be a reality soon.
A nursing home.
A nursing home, yes.
One day soon.
Yes, hopefully one day soon, yes.
Albert, thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your wonderful memories with CYC.
Thank you very much. I also would like to thank CYC and pray for its continued success. Thank you very much for having me.